Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Case for Pro-Life presentation. This is part 2 of our video series. My name is Kylie Armstrong, and I am the Ministry Operations Assistant for Culture of Life Family Services.
And my name is Ariana Allen, and I am the Education Coordinator also for COLS. So last time we laid the spiritual and historical foundations for abortion and the importance of the pro-life movement. And in this section, we will discuss the scientific, political, and philosophical views of abortion and how you can be an advocate for life.
So we're starting this presentation with the million-dollar question of when does life begin? The answer to this question is not a mystery, and it is not difficult. Life begins at the moment of fertilization. Per every basic biology textbook you can read. And fertilization can occur 3 hours up to 5 days after intercourse. And so the sperm cell and the egg will join together at fertilization and create a new organism. The cells of this organism will begin to multiply and the life begins. And 2 weeks later, you can hear the heart beating on this new little human. A genetically distinct human being with unique DNA is formed at this moment at fertilization. The 46 chromosomes present here are 23 from the mom and 23 from the dad that come together, and the sex, eye color, hair color, and blood type are immediately determined at this moment.
Yeah, so let's get into the development of the fetus. So the first trimester is weeks 1 through 13 and months 1 through 3 of pregnancy. During this trimester, the organs begin to develop and function. The heartbeat begins, the spine develops, and facial features like the eyes and nose develop, as well as the arms and legs. Fingernails and toenails begin to grow. 90% of abortions are performed during this trimester. The second trimester is weeks 14 through 27 and months 4 through 6 of pregnancy. During this trimester, the hair begins to grow, the gender of the baby is detectable on an ultrasound, they make facial expressions, open their eyes, suck their thumb, and their brain function matures. This means that they can control their movement, which is why mom starts to feel them. They control their hearing and breathing with their new brain function. And there's growing evidence that they can feel pain at 20 weeks or possibly even earlier. And most babies can live outside the womb at 24 weeks gestation, which means that they would survive with extra medical care if delivered early. 9% of abortions are performed during this trimester of pregnancy. The third and final trimester of pregnancy is weeks 28 through 40 and months 7 through 9. During this trimester, the baby can touch, taste, and hear. They can recognize their mom's voice, and they can see light, blink, and dream. Their brain, lungs, and nervous system are matured, and they begin to gain weight in preparation for birth. Their skin softens, and once the head drops, they're ready for birth. About 1% of abortions are performed during the third trimester. And in New York, Alaska, Colorado, New Hampshire, New Jersey, New Mexico, Oregon, Vermont, and Washington, D.C., you can have an abortion until the end of the third trimester or the moment of birth for any reason.
So we went over some biology, and now we're going to look at politics and philosophy in understanding the pro-life, pro-choice argument. So we are going to look at the following common pro-choice stances. My body, my choice. Abortion liberates women. Legal abortion keeps women safe. Separate religion from legislation. What about rape and incest? And I would never personally get an abortion, but I can't tell another person what to do.
So the first pro-choice stance we're looking at is my body, my choice. And this often sounds like the following statements. A woman has a right to do whatever she wants with her body. The government should not be able to restrict her decisions. The baby is living inside of the mother's body, so she should have the right to terminate the pregnancy. Women should not be forced to have a baby. And a woman's right to her body is greater than the right of the fetus to live within her body.
The pro-life response to this is not your body, not your choice. Basic biology confirms that human life begins at the moment of fertilization, like we just talked about. and the body of the fetus is completely separate from the mother and will grow into a completely distinct human being.
So while it's true that a woman can do whatever she chooses to do with her own body, she cannot do whatever she wants with somebody else's body. In this case, she would be choosing to terminate the life of another human being if she chose to have an abortion. She would be terminating the existence of another body and not her own. So human rights are not earned, they are implicit in our humanity, and the mother is not more human than the fetus, and therefore it's not up to her to decide to end the life of the fetus because she's not more human than the fetus is.
So our next pro-choice stance is abortion liberates women. Babies are physical, emotional, and financial burden. Abortion frees women from the responsibility of caring for an unwanted child, and laws against abortion are methods of female oppression.
So our pro-life response to this is that abortion liberates men and hurts women by liberating men from the consequences of sex. So 73.8% of women who have had an abortion experience some form of pressure to terminate their pregnancies. 58.3% indicated that they decided to abort in order to make others happy. And 30% admitted that they were afraid that they would lose their partner if they failed to terminate their pregnancy. This means that women may be choosing abortion because they think they have no other options and are trapped by their circumstances.
Yeah, and ultimately, abortion sidesteps the real needs of women. If a woman is in an unplanned pregnancy, she needs more flexibility in her workplace and greater rights. She needs affordable childcare, and she needs support from the state to receive everything that she needs to care for this child. And abortion just sees the unwanted child as a problem that needs to be wiped out and taken care of, instead of providing women with the needs that they actually, the things that they actually need in this unplanned pregnancy. And finally, multiple research studies show that women who have suffered an abortion have an increased risk of developing mental health problems. And they will suffer the emotional trauma from abortion. And so none of these things are liberating or bring freedom at all. And so it's really important to make that distinction.
Yeah, so another pro-choice stance is that legal abortion keeps women safe. They say that abortion will happen whether it's legal or not, and that more than 10,000 women died annually from illegal abortions before Roe versus Wade. This is according to Dr. Bernard Nathanson, who is the founder of NARAL, which is the National Abortion Rights Action League. And these statistics were spouted during a pro-abortion media campaign in the 1970s.
The pro-life response to this is that legalizing abortion does not make it safer. So this Dr. Nathanson later admitted that he falsified the number of deaths from illegal abortion because pro-choice was not the popular stance at the time, and they were trying to dramatize the issue to win more supporters to the pro-abortion campaign. So the Center of Disease Control reported that actually 39 women had died from abortion the year before Roe v. Wade was made legal, not 10,000 like he claimed. And what actually made abortion safer as a medical procedure was modern medicine, and not because it was legal. Antibiotics were developed around the same time that abortion was made legal. And so meaning if a woman had an abortion, she probably would get an infection from the procedure, and that's what would cause death. Typically was not a botched abortion. It was just the lack of medicine needed to fight an infection that would enter into the woman's system if she did have an abortion. So antibiotics made this procedure, in essence, safer for the woman. But ultimately, legalizing an activity does not make it safer. Think about murder. Legalizing murder does not make it safer. That doesn't make any sense. Or even drug use. If you legalize using heroin, does that make it safer for the body that's intaking the heroin? No, it's still very dangerous. And so basically saying that legalizing abortion makes it safer is saying that legalizing abortion makes it safer to kill a human being, which once again, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, so another common pro-choice stance that I used to hold was that religion should be separate from legislation. So they say separation of church and state is inferred by the First Amendment of the US Constitution. Catholics took the first stance against abortion in the United States, and many pro-life organizations are Christian-based. Roe versus Wade classified the right to abortion under the Fourth Amendment, which is the right to privacy, and therefore abortion is a constitutional right.
The pro-life response to this is that abortion is a human rights issue. It's not a religious issue. And so, as Ari said, that the Constitution shares that abortion is implicit to the right to privacy, and that's how the Roe v. Wade ruling came about. We thought we would juxtapose this against the Declaration of Independence, which is another one of our founding documents. And this states that life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness are entitled to every person, every United States citizen, and that we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. So that all men are equal and that they all have the right to life are the ideas that our nation was founded on. So, do you believe that all human beings have a right to life that cannot be violated by another? And do you believe that all human beings are created equal? If you believe these things, then actually Roe versus Wade is unconstitutional foundationally. Because if unborn babies are human beings, abortion permits one human being to kill another, privacy or not. It's a matter of life and death. And we know that this is the most fundamental principle of the United States belief, that the right to life is the most foundational human right. So this is a very difficult issue to address, talking about rape and incest in regards to abortion. So as we talked about in our first presentation, that human sexuality is our most foundational identity and how we understand our human bodies, and that God created sex good. And but we know that because of the fall, it can be twisted and distorted. And so rape and incest are heinous violations of human sexuality and are so foundationally wrong, and that cannot be overstated. However, just looking at the abortion issue as a whole, less than 1% of abortions are due to rape or incest. So this means that 99% of abortions have nothing to do with this very narrow and very difficult issue. But this sometimes seems to be the way that people lead with promoting the legality of abortion, that because of rape or incest. But there are millions and millions of babies that are being aborted that are not in this circumstance whatsoever. But the idea that a child may be conceived in rape or incest is unwanted is another very common thing to think. And the idea is that an unwanted child is going to have a bad life. Maybe that they'll end up in foster care or on the streets or uneducated. And any child that is under these circumstances right now that's living, that we think qualifies as having a bad life, carrying this belief is saying that that child, it would be better if they weren't born, believing that unwanted children should be aborted. And so, should we kill living children currently in these circumstances? No. Who are we to say whose life will be bad or good or what's going to happen? We don't know what's going to happen. But ultimately, this idea that some lives are better than the other adheres to the idea of eugenic abortion. And in our first presentation, we talked about Margaret Sanger, who's the founder of Planned Parenthood, and she promoted the idea of eugenics, which is that certain populations and types of people should be able to procreate because they are better than others. And so we're seeing eugenic abortion very live and well because less desirable children are being aborted. 90% of unborn children with Down syndrome are aborted. 79% of abortion clinics are in minority communities, and more Black children were aborted than born in New York in 2015. And finally, Asian and Asian American populations are missing thousands of female children because of an increase of gender-selective abortion over the past 4 years, because male children are preferred over female children.
Yeah, the bottom line is, who are we to decide who should live and who should die? These statistics show that we're deciding that certain populations of people don't have a right to live because we think that their lives are less valuable than perhaps our own, or somebody who is in better circumstances than they are. We're deciding that their life is not worth living, and that's not up for us to decide. Death is a part of human life, and that's up to God, though, when He decides that it's time for us to die and how we should die. We don't get to make those decisions because we don't know. We don't know what a person's life is worth, and we cannot measure that.
Yeah.
So the argument against abortion is simple. The argument boils down to, is an unborn baby a human being? Does it have human parents? Yes. If it's growing, isn't it alive? Yes. Then it's a living human being. Is it morally wrong to kill human beings? Yes. Abortion is the direct killing of a human being, and therefore abortion is always morally wrong.
So this argument against abortion renders all pro-abortion arguments irrelevant because there is not a single justifiable reason or circumstance to take the life of a defenseless human being. All human beings have equal rights, and the right to life is the most fundamental human right. So we wanted to include this last stance because I know Ariana and myself have both believed this at a certain part in our life, and it makes sense. The idea that I would never personally get an abortion, but I can't tell another person what to do. And maybe you believe this because you hate politics and you don't want to get involved in it. Or you don't want to force another person to believe in what you believe. Or just being pro-life is extremely unpopular, so you don't want to take a stance on the issue. But carrying this belief is adopting a pro-choice stance.
Yeah, this belief often comes from the belief that abortion is a private matter between a woman and her doctor, which is exactly how the judges in Roe v. Wade justified making that decision, that it was a privacy issue. And the thing is that women often hide their abortions from their doctor. 98% of abortions happen in freestanding abortion clinics and not in the doctor's office. Is it okay for a woman and her doctor to privately decide to kill her toddler? No, that would never be permissible. The only difference here is that an unborn baby is not as old as a toddler. It hasn't had enough time to develop. So it's still wrong for a woman to go into her doctor and ask the doctor to kill her unborn child.
Right. And just from a legal standpoint here, talking about privacy, that the point of laws is that people often make bad private choices. And doesn't every law tell us what we can and cannot do? We have laws telling people not to abuse children because they cannot defend themselves. So the unborn are no different. And the bottom line here is that abortion affects everybody. Just think about potential siblings or spouses or friends or people that would have accomplished incredible things that just aren't here because of abortion and because the presence that abortion has in our culture.
So another stance that we wanted to address that is very common, and again, I also held prior to being pro-life, that birth control removes the need for abortion. The thing is that 45% of pregnancies in the US are unplanned, and 51% of abortion patients in the United States reported that they had used a contraceptive method in the month that they became pregnant. This means that contraception is not preventing unplanned pregnancies and is not discouraging the desire for abortion.
Right. In our first video presentation, we read a quote from this woman, Linda Gordon, who's a pro-choice feminist and writes about the history of birth control. And quoted here from one of her writings, she says that this relation between contraception and abortion must be emphasized, for it is inaccurate to see them as alternatives. No method of contraception yet developed can eliminate the need for legal abortion. Indeed, from a historical perspective, contraception at first may have increased the clientele for abortion because it accustoms people to planning reproduction and makes them unlikely to accept loss of control. So we've talked about this before, that birth control is used, the consequences of sex are taken away. If birth control fails, then abortion is used as a backup birth control because there was not openness to life to begin with. So birth control does not remove the need for abortion. Birth control is actually perpetuating and increasing the need for abortion. So ultimately, believe it or not, pro-life is pro-woman. The original feminists, pictured here, Susan B. Anthony, they're fighting for the woman's right to vote and for equality for women in society. They were against abortion and contraception deeply. They believed that these were the ultimate exploitation and objectification of women because it allowed men to have sex with women with no consequences, and that it completely exploited their bodies.
Yeah, and abortion encourages a woman to choose something that's contrary to her nature. In the first presentation, we talked about how it's in woman's nature. Her body is designed to carry children, to nourish life. And this tells a woman that she has to choose between her fertility and her goals and dreams. And that's just not true, and it's not pro-woman.
Right. And we can't forget that more than half of aborted babies are women. We talked about the gender selective abortion and how that's very real. So being pro-life, it's supporting the mother and the female child. It's not just about supporting the mom, it's about supporting both of them. And ultimately, women deserve better than abortion. We have failed as a culture if women need to sacrifice their children and bring harm to their bodies from an abortion procedure in order to keep their jobs, follow their dreams, and be a part of society. Pro-life says that women can and should have it all because women are incredible and all life is sacred and wanted. So being pro-life truly is being pro-woman.
So Mother Teresa, we're both a fan of. We talked about her in our last presentation because she is so thoroughly pro-life in everything that she does. And we think that she says it best. The so-called right to abortion has pitted mothers against their children and women against men. It has sown violence and discord at the heart of the most intimate human relationships. It has portrayed the greatest gifts, a child, as a competitor, an intrusion, and an inconvenience. Human rights are not a privilege conferred by the government. They are every human being's entitlement by virtue of his humanity. The right to life does not depend and must not be declared to be contingent on the pleasure of anyone else, not even a parent or a sovereign.
So alternatives to abortion. First, of course, we think of adoption. There are 2 million couples waiting to adopt a child in the United States right now. That means there are 36 couples for every one child. However, adoption is a brave and difficult decision. Many pregnancy resource centers will report that adoption feels like a sort of death for the woman because it makes her feel like she's failed in her ability to be a mother by needing to give up her child. And adoption is even scarier than abortion or the idea of actually parenting the child for most women. So this is a decision that needs to be treated with great respect. There are 2 types of adoption. There's open and closed adoption. So closed adoption is where the biological mother will place the child for adoption, and the adoptive parents will have full custody over that child, and there will not be a relationship with the biological mother. But open adoption, which is becoming more popular and is now the preferred method of adoption, is where the biological mother and the adoptive parents will choose each other and develop a relationship. And then the biological mother will play a small part of the child's life and be able to keep that contact while the adoptive parents raise that child. And another alternative to abortion is maybe having a family member raise the child, or just asking the other people in your life for extra support. When a woman is in unplanned pregnancy, sometimes abortion seems like the only way out of the problem, but just taking a step back and realizing that there is extra love and support to be had. That's maybe an option that a woman hasn't explored yet. And finally, another alternative to abortion is temporary foster care. This is where a woman can carry the child to term and then place that child in foster care temporarily until she's stable and ready, and then she can gain custody of her child and be the caregiver of that child.
Yeah, and a lot of women think that they can't parent their child because they don't have the resources to do so. But they can also seek support and resources from pro-life nonprofit organizations and pregnancy resource centers, such as housing, food, medical care, and childcare. So the organization that Kylie and I work for, Culture of Life Family Services, is one of those organizations. And we're dedicated to helping women who have unplanned pregnancies with ultrasounds, pregnancy tests, advocacy, family planning, education, and referrals for housing, employment, and other needs, regardless of anybody's ability to pay. And we're in a unique position as an organization because we also function as a full family practice and medical clinic. which means that we can do prenatal care, primary care, and pediatric services. So we are not just serving during the prenatal period, but throughout the entire family's life. And again, regardless of their ability to pay, we want to provide services that help families to thrive.
Yeah. We also offer holistic women's fertility care. So we help couples with infertility with natural family planning, and we help women understand their cycle. And we also offer abortion pill reversal, where if there are two pills that goes along with an abortion, if a woman chooses to have a medical abortion. And the first pill will cut off progesterone, which is the hormone that the baby needs to receive nourishment in the womb. And if a woman takes the first abortion pill and decides that she's changed her mind and she wants to keep the pregnancy, we're actually able to offer that woman an extra dose of progesterone. And we've seen that this is an effective way to sustain the pregnancy. And we've had hundreds of births happen because of abortion pill reversal and how we've been able to help those women, which is pretty incredible. So ultimately, be an advocate for life. Being pro-life means that we are seeking to create a culture where abortion is unthinkable. And there's so many ways that you can do this where you are right now as a student. The first way is getting connected with Students for Life America. You can start a pro-life club at your school, and they will give you all the resources that you need to be trained as a pro-life ambassador and how you can advocate for pregnant students and student mothers. March for Life is another amazing way to be a pro-life presence. You can join the hundreds of thousands of people that go to DC every year and peacefully protest against the Roe v. Wade ruling. Another way is through 40 Days for Life. This is actually happening right now. They will have peaceful prayer vigils outside of abortion clinics just to be a presence there to support women that maybe are having second thoughts about getting an abortion. And finally, you can volunteer. For us at COLFS, give your time, your talents, your money, anything that you can to be an advocate for life and support the pro-life movement.
Yeah, so we want to end by talking about this catechism quote. And it says that human life must be respected and protected absolutely from the moment of conception. From the first moment of his existence, a human being must be recognized as having the rights of a person, among which is the inviolable right of every innocent human being to life. God, the Lord of life, has entrusted to men the noble mission of safeguarding life, and men must carry it out in a manner worthy of themselves. So it's every single person's mission that is hearing this right now to guard and protect life, to be an advocate for a culture of life. And the way that we do that is not just by saying that we're pro-life or getting involved in one of these organizations, but the way that we live our lives every single day, the way that we treat those around us as human beings deserving of dignity and honor because they are created in the image and likeness of God. So if you can live like this is a culture of life right now, you can spread the pro-life message. We thank you so much for listening to our presentation. We hope that you've enjoyed it. And if you have any other questions on how to get involved at COLFS, please feel free to visit our website and get in contact with us. We hope you have a great week.
Thank you, guys.